Hi, everyone. So excited to be here again, especially with my good friend and colleague, Karl Dakin. Today's word of the day is teamwork. Obviously, has a lot of application to pretty much everything you're involved in everyday life. No person is an island, and we're all dependent on each other to some extent. Chat's wide open. Love to hear your experience or insights into teamwork. Make us more relevant, create some wonderful takeaways for you today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Karl and have him give us a quick little update and initial thoughts on teamwork. Karl?
Good morning, Don. Thanks for having me as a guest on your program. It's always kind of a mental challenge and in an entertaining fashion to talk about some of these things, which are part and parcel of every single small business, every organization, basically doing anything that involves more than a single person. So when we talk about teamwork, it's a matter of saying, well, there's something we would all like to do together. We have a common goal, and we need to do a number of activities in order to achieve that goal. But at the very front end, when you're putting together a team, when you're putting together a project, many of these things are undefined, and nobody really is certain, what's going to be done. But as you work towards defining things, you will start making a list of all the tasks that need to be accomplished. This may be a business plan, it may be a project plan, something of that nature. But as you create a task, then somebody's got to be responsible for it. And that person has to be the primary responsibility, meaning that they are the ones who have to make sure the task gets accomplished. And again, that seems pretty straightforward, pretty obvious. But when you're doing something that's never been done before, or the combination of things and times and markets and everything makes it a brand new adventure, brand new opportunity, then at that point, more detail needs to go into that early planning. And planning meaning who's on the team, what are their responsibilities? Are there any gaps that we've left out that would cause an activity not to be completed? And I do this for every project I'm engaged in. And I'm engaged in, I think, I was doing a count this morning, a little over a dozen projects. And most of them are things where you're saying, well, generally I know where we're going, but let's get down to detail.
Mm-hmm.
Devil's in the detail here, and I want to know who's going to do what. And sometimes you hope somebody's going to do something, but they don't step up to the line, and then you have problems which may hurt or even kill a project. You may have to go replace somebody, which is can be very sensitive if you've invited somebody onto a charity board and all they do is sit there like a lump, which is the nicest way I'm going to put it. You need to get them off the board because their very presence is not only counterproductive to your goal because they're not contributing, but they're in the way. They become an interference. They become their own obstacle because other people on the board are going, well, if they don't have to do anything, why do I have to do something? So these are all common problems, common issues that I was involved with a number of them over the weekend, and I will be dealing with a number of them throughout the remainder of the day. So I think teamwork is it's a term that everybody hears, but actually being power user, a power implementer of teamwork, that's something that is a skill that anyone who wants to do anything should work on constantly to improve their capabilities.
Hey, that is such a great overview of teamwork. And obviously, it appears to be very dynamic. So it's always changing based on the players, based on the situation, based on the ability to keep people on the same page and marching to the same drummer. With that said, we've got some of our favorite people showing up today. Kelly's here. When we're talking about teamwork, there's nothing like a team, and Kelly's part of our team, part of our cohort group that gets together every other Thursday and really shares a lot of wonderful knowledge to improve the team itself, but also everybody else's team it tends to flow to. Kelly has the awesome journey with Christy Howard, which I recommend highly. It's at 1 p.m. Eastern time. I believe Kelly's taken a little hiatus on season 2, and we'll be starting back up if, might have another episode to want to speak out of turn. But with that, I can't thank Kelly enough. Been on this team, on this show since January 19th, the day I'll never forget as the beginning, and has done nothing but improve both of us and then everybody with us in so many wonderful ways. So thank you, Kelly, for being here. And thank you for being here, and helping in so many ways that, it's hard to really describe. So we've got Carrie here. Farmer asked the cow why the cow was hanging steaks in the closet, caused her hanger steaks. Well, that's a good one. Not too rough. Hello to Kelly and hello to Karl. Well, thank you, Carrie. Always great to have you. And if you look around, there's so many different teams you're involved in, some more casually, some more seriously, whether you're on a sports team, where you're competitive together, not against each other. And I think that's really important because when you look at teams, it's always the teams that have people working together, not the star with the rest of the team. Too many people look at the key players and forget about the support players, the people who may just be encouraging and may not always be on the field. And, I think it's so important to build your own team with people who are positive, constructive, supportive, teachable, where ego doesn't get in the way, where the whole goal is working together to win together and to celebrate together. Part of team, as Karl has alluded to, is how are you when things are down, as well as how are things when things are up. There's a lot of fair weather teams out there that do really great when the wind's in their favor, and really start falling apart when things aren't doing as well as they should. And in every situation, there's going to be good times. There's going to be challenging times, especially if you're involved in initiatives that are pushing the envelope, that are, on the frontier, that don't have a lot of precedent. And how do you work through information? How do you prioritize what's most important? How do you do what you need, not what you like? And I think, one person, and me and Karl talked about that for a little while previously, can change the whole complexion of the team. That's why sometimes you have a high impact player show up and everything changes. Why? Because they bring confidence, they bring strength, they bring experience, wisdom, and people want to follow a quality leader. And too many cases, people are standing on precedent or experience or the past, and really looking forward is the key. And how many people can you bring along? They say leadership is the ability to have people do what they wouldn't have or couldn't have done without you. So it's not only what you do, it's what you help other people do to build that team. Kelly's very appreciative. Great. I can't say enough, so I'm not going to say any more, or I'll limit myself to how much I can say. Carrie's back to greeting everybody and saying hello. Well, it's a Monday. Great to see everybody so enthusiastic about starting the week. And I think, just the comments reflect what quality teammates do is they show up for each other, even when they're not in the game. How important was it when you were in sports as a kid and your family showed up in the stands, and just to know they were there for you encouraged you. And also, what happens when things don't work out? How does the team help each other? Is everybody pointing fingers, throwing rocks at each other when things go down? Because what you give is what you're going to get. And what comes around goes around. So there's a lot of elements to it. So, Karl, what has been some of the best teams that you put together looking back, and what was the cause or the reason why they became so successful?
I've been on dozens, maybe hundreds of teams, and the one thing that drives a good team is first a total respect for each other member of the team. When somebody comes into a group and says, "I'm better than you," or "You're going to take orders from me," or "I can do whatever I want to do," they're not actually being part of a team. They're present, so to speak, maybe not accounted for, but they're not working together. And everybody talks about, there's a need for most activities require two or more people, two or more skills, two or more sets of experiences and contacts and so forth. Well, the bigger, the more complex the project, the more people that are involved. And you'll see some huge companies that don't work as a team. They happen to have a lot of people in the same building at the same time, but half the group gets up in the morning with no idea exactly where the company is going, or the management team is doing something to put more money in their own pocket to the disadvantage necessarily of the company that they lead. And so you look at everybody on the group and you're going, if you respect and everybody, and that requires kind of knowing everybody on the team and who they are, what they bring to the team, both on and off the field, as I say, at the office and outside of the office in their home life, then that's a building block. That's a starting point for having a team. The second thing, then, I think, is everybody making a commitment towards the common goal. This is where we all kind of put a flag in the ground and go, that's where we want to go. That's what our outcome we're looking for, and we commit ourselves, our resources, our reputations towards achieving that particular outcome. And again, this is not something that's well done all the time everywhere. Too often, people are given an assignment without understanding how it fits into the overall goal, or they may be given an assignment that they're unprepared for, or they're under resourced for. It's like, "Oh, go out and do that." He says, "Well, I need a car to get, go deliver this particular thing." "Well, you don't have a car?" "No, I don't." Then what's going to happen? So, planning, which we've talked about on this show before, is part of the process of understanding who's on the team and what their capabilities are, what their resources need to be. But the relationships that occur within a team is the most important part, because there will be obstacles, challenges, things that go wrong, things that don't go according to plan, and you have to overcome those. And I've seen teams blow up. It's like the first challenge, the first obstacle, and boom, they're gone. They disintegrate because no one wants to deal with the adversity. I've seen other ones put their heads down, grind it out, figure it out, and basically convert into the opportunity that they were trying to achieve, because they worked together and they were willing to deal with those kinds of problems. So I think first is knowing everybody and everybody understanding who they are and what their capabilities are, and then with the respect for these people, then working together towards a common objective is the heart and soul of what teamwork's all about.
Yeah, so well said. And I think it's so important, all the elements that you brought to the surface. Obviously, communication is key. How do you get your message across so not only is it heard and understood, but able to be activated? And then there's that balance, because there's companies who all they do is communicate, and they're so busy communicating, nothing's getting done. And that's obvious, with meetings. And meetings by themselves are just meetings until you add the players to them. And is it inclusive? You know, uh, are people allowed to play? Are people respected for what they do, not so much for how they may symbolize something? And, is everybody there for the right reasons? Some people are there for different reasons, and that's well appreciated. But how sincere and honest is this team? What are people saying to what are really people thinking? And then, therefore, what are they doing together? One thing that really is kind of more visible is naturally things like sports and even, filmmakers. They typically have a lot of the same team throughout their career. Could be a screenwriter, could be somebody who does camera work or makeup work. But once you find those key players, you don't want to disassociate from them if possible. You like to carry them on to the next project because you have experience. And experience and knowledge can go so far versus fresh group of people. Now everybody's got to get to know each other, and it gets synergistic, good and bad, based on how you bring people together. And that one extra person could be more of a minus than a positive, because if they're not adding to the group, they're usually taking away. And then naturally, you've always got people who have their own opinions, right? They'll take whatever you have and think there's a way of optimizing it, believing that changing it will only improve it, when sometimes it's better left to kind of bubble and simmer and come to something that's positive over time versus these herky-jerky, let's go this way, then let's go that way, or let's go deep and then let's go back to shallow. So balance is so important to make sure everything is riding the right way, and also having some fun. Is it enjoyable when the team gets together? Is there people who can't wait to see other people, based on their experience? And, also, how do you deal with the unexpected? And I think that's a lot of teams aren't used to that. Is like something new comes up. How do you accommodate that? How do you work through it or with it? And then how do you learn from it? But I think also honesty is so important. It is what it is, and that's all it is until you want to add more to it for as long as you want to. So you're going to have disappointments because, especially if it's new, if it's exciting, if you're challenging the norm in some ways, you're going to find out where you're not supposed to be. And how do you respond to that? Or how do you even take a hiatus? How do you decide, hey, we've reached a point where we're better off reconvening at a certain point if we have an obvious obstacle that no one seems to be able to figure out, or nobody's willing to step up, because that's where imbalance comes in, is most people say, well, if you can't do it, I'll do it for you, and I'll take care of this. And pretty soon you're doing it all, and you've got a lot of people out of the action who were meant to be part of the action. So I think it's, it really lends itself to creativity, innovation, and especially as we talked when I started a little bit about communication. And different people respond to different communication. Some people can take it just raw. Some people, you got to sugarcoat it a little bit or ease it in, because their initial reaction may be overdone, and it's always hard to unring a bell. So we have Carrie says, just had attempt to get more help with food. Now I wish I had never left a job I had back when I was with Walmart. Hated a job and I had injuries. If the man could have worked with me, I might have still had some money. Well, I think, you learn from the past, and some things you can't change, but it's the education that made the lesson worthwhile. And a lot of it is, being proactive. is identifying things and again communicating when they're happening or when you think they're happening and get some, some insight or feedback. And the same thing with teams. Some people you just know it is not right, but you don't understand what it is that's not right. And when you ask, sometimes it's like, it's okay, I can work with it, but it's not okay. And typically it comes back for another conversation. So I guess there is something to damage control or damage avoidance, or also getting other people, because when you're talking about a team, it's not an absolute, right? It's not all in or all out. There's usually people who are hotter and warmer towards something, and people who are cooler and not as affected by it. And sometimes you gotta shuffle the deck a little, or you got to be right to the point, because you don't want to put good time and good money after bad time and bad money. So chasing something that is too elusive or too difficult. And again, people will have to come forward and commit from the beginning to the middle to the end. And hopefully in businesses, you will have people who will get you to a certain point, but won't take you any further. And that's an opportunity to pivot, or, nothing lasts forever. So once you can identify, and then that says, hey, hang in there for 3 more months. We understand your situation. We're going to work to replace you in a positive way. Because what you don't want is a real rip the bandage off too fast, where all of a sudden it's painful for a lot of people. And, I think people remember the negative in a lot of ways more than the positive. So what's your thoughts, Karl?
I think that people should give more thought to joining a team or being part of a team. And this covers the entire board, both business and personal. Whether you're joining a local sports team to play a little pickup basketball, a book club, maybe you want to serve on a board of a local charity, or you're thinking about taking a new job somewhere. To Carrie's comment, you need to look at the team. If it's already in place, then you are coming onto that team, and you should be evaluating this, because your participation is an investment of your time, your life, your reputation. And if the team has a record or a history of being disrespectful or being, as we call them in the British, they have classes of people who think that they're above everybody else because of one thing or another. And then you may decide that this is not a team for me. This is not where my skills or experience are going to get respect. They're not where I'm going to get the most value out of my life. I may be unhappy the first day of employment. And I've worked with some large organizations. I have clients who are occasionally large organizations, and I find that I have a harder time working with them because their whole agenda is a little harder to understand. My ability to help or influence or contribute is obviously going to be less. I would like to have greater impact with my time, and I would like to have less bureaucratic waste of my time going through circles of people trying to get sign-offs who don't seem to be capable of leading or doing or anything else. So um, I think if you are thinking about joining a team, you should see what information you can collect, do a little intelligence work. Today on the internet, almost every employer's got a ranking on, is it a good place to work? And I would start with that, and then talk to people who work there, and throw up some of the issues like Carrie mentioned. If you get injured on the job, some employers will take care of you, and you feel like your mom's giving you chicken soup when you've got a cold. And other ones are basically, well, you're not any good to us today, so we're going to ignore you, we're going to not respond to you, we're not going to help you. And if they don't appreciate you, then at that point you don't want to be on that team. And I know a lot of people go, well, you have lots of options, you can go wherever you want, but Some people don't have that many options. They have to get a job. They have to put bread on the table until they can find something else. But we've seen a lot of people jump jobs because of COVID. They realized that whatever job they're in didn't make any sense. There had to be a better job out there, and a lot of people changed jobs. An amazing number of people changed jobs because they wanted to be on a different team. They wanted a team where they could do more, get paid more, be respected more, be happier in their job. And but that also applies to everything you're doing outside. So whatever team that you're on or you're thinking about going on, think about how well it fits up with you, and is it going to achieve your personal goals as well as your economic or financial goals.
Yeah, excellent advice. And, a lot of times a team is a team of one. I know it doesn't sound typical because, it seems like one person wouldn't be a group. But I would compare that again to sports, where a tennis player is really the only person on the field. Now they have a team behind them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You know,
I was
trainer.
gonna speak to that. Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
whole team behind that. Yeah.
yeah, but it's their game. It's up to them. They don't have anybody to hand off to. So how they do is how they do. And again, there's support team, there's actual team. On a football is probably one of the better examples. If everybody doesn't do exactly what they're supposed to do, they're probably going to get a penalty, right? It'll be offsides, it'll be a fumble, it'll be something that someone needed to do something with someone, block for them, throw a pass to them. The other thing is, if you don't find a team that fits, create your own team. And when you have whatever you have, that's where you start. And knowing that, I think Karl makes a good point. If you find yourself overreaching, do a little underreaching. Find something that fits, is relatively easy, and you're well appreciated. And I think that's where volunteering can come in. And interning, I've talked about that, where you might not have a job with an organization that you really want to be part of, but you can play a role with them. For what, you could be a goodwill ambassador, you could be an influencer for them. You get attention by what you do. And I think Karl makes a great point: distinguish and differentiate yourself in the marketplace. The only way you can get seen, and that's how auditions take place. They typically don't pay you to audition for a role. You have to compete with a bunch of other, let's say, actors or singers or comedians or whatever the situation is. But that visibility, that association has so many values. I was just reading about some Hollywood stars, and they always have biographies or documentaries on Netflix or wherever. And there was always one person that stood out, a teacher, someone who took an interest in them, and they didn't even understand why, but gave them that support, gave them that direction, but also made some phone calls for them. And especially when they had some challenges or were down on their luck, they showed up for them. So it's really building the direct team, but also having that support team. And it could be a professional group. Like I said, it could be just family and friends who you go to when things are down. I think being busy goes a long way towards not getting frustrated. I think inaction creates more inaction and more, let's say, regret and disappointment from the past. Like I mentioned, or I've heard, most successful people focus on the future, not the past, focus on what they can control, not what they can't control, and do little things right over time and allow the time to take its course. And I think people put too much pressure on themselves both ways, as far as doing too much too soon, or become their worst critic. And when they need the most confidence, they're the ones who are pulling themselves down because of things that might not have worked in the past. And those, again, can be lessons for the future. And, the other thing about teams, the people who really stand out are the people who go above and beyond and surprise people on the upside. They say the most discouraging thing for someone to see is walking into the general's tent and see him crying into their hands. And you kind of feel the battle's not going too well at that point. And, actually, Napoleon was considered to be the 10,000 man. And the reason for that is when he would show up on the battlefield, he would have as much positive impact as 10,000 more troops, because he would rally everybody and they would believe and they would go forward. So, I think that's important, is belief in things you can't really see or touch, but you feel. Like, hey, I don't know this person, but I got a feeling there's some greatness here. And if I can't make money, maybe I can learn how to make money with this person. And if we don't succeed here, maybe it's a building block for the next opportunity. And taking it out of your hands and placing it into other people's hands, take a high level of trust. Because most people are afraid to share. They're afraid to give up all their cards because they don't have any more to play. But the key is really how well do you play what you have? And the other thing are the intangibles, the punctuality, consistency, paying attention in a meeting, remembering what was said, taking notes at certain points. So you can help yourself in many ways and take the pressure off of team members from having to help you, and now taking your situation as a model or an example to work from. And eventually that projects all through the organization. How you treat anybody is going to have an impact on everybody, because people say, hey, look at what happened to Jim. He took his neck off. I mean, he put his neck out there and he got cut off. Well, I'm going to learn from Jim, right? And pretty soon you may get full attention and compliance, but no creativity, no risk, no innovation. And some of the greatest leaders, I know Steve Jobs, one of his biggest things was hire people and let them loose, because that's what you hired them for. And if you have enough attention, you can see things, and learning early is something that costs less and lasts longer, and I think it's getting kind of nip it in the bud when you see things starting to go awry. And some people are afraid to draw attention to, hey, this has to stop. There's a point where firmness has to show up. The casual, we can work this out. At a certain point, you say, I can't go any further than this. And if things don't change, things are going to change. And I think that puts not only the carrot, but the stick out there. And it's not punitive. It's just we're getting out of line. So if you can point to something to say, hey, we committed to this, and here's what we ended up doing, and here's what we ended up getting. We can't keep going that route, or here's where the next 3 months are going to take us. So you're actually preserving a team when you're calling out the team. And then everybody has different styles. I mean, if you look at basketball, I've never seen coaches get so infuriated during a game. Some coaches can just sit back like almost, well, it depends on the coach. But some people have a gentle touch and a soft-spoken manner. And some people are just totally maniacs. And it really doesn't, I would prefer to be with a soft-spoken person. I think everybody does. But hey, if that's who they are and that's what they have always presented themselves as, so it's no surprise, you respect them. Because actually I was seeing this thing about Charles Barkley. And, he's quite a character. And he was a high draft pick for the Philadelphia 76ers. And actually, I think it was Dr. J who was on the team at the time, Julius Erving. And he was just starting out. And he just happened to ask Dr. J, what do you think my challenge is? And he said, well, you're fat and you're lazy. He says, that's what it is. And he actually said, if you want, I'll help you. And he ended up losing 40 pounds, and he never forgot that. And that made him great. So, someone by being totally honest and direct and not feeling like any concern, but telling the truth, puts the responsibility on your shoulders. So, Karl, it seems like there's so many examples of different management styles and leadership methods. You know, I guess the key is, how do you link it all together with the right group who aligns with that and also gives a little variety to it, so it's not just one way?
Well, I think that there are so many different varieties, which has a lot to do with experience. I have found that I prefer to work with people who've been there, done that, almost where that we can finish each other's sentences because we have enough shared experiences, enough understanding of what needs to be done, that we don't have to go into a 1 hour webinar to explain something to get across a point. And with that, at that level, then what I have found is that if we use the term vulnerable for humility, is I can go to every member of the team and go, I could use some more help here. And it isn't that I may not be able to do whatever's on the table, but if they can help, we might get it done quicker or faster, or they may open a door that's beyond me. That's not that I couldn't do it myself, but they may have a better door than I have to open. And at the same time, I want to go to every member of the team, and every time they're doing something, if I can chip in or if I can help, then I'm like, hey, have you looked at this? And if they go, yeah, I have, then that we're done with that. If I go, I may have a template or a document, or maybe you should talk to this person. And because my goal is to help them be the best team member they can be. And hopefully they will reciprocate and help me be the best team member I can be, and which means we have a better probability of achieving our goal and doing it, maybe overperforming or getting there quicker, or something along that line. What I see where things fall apart is where we have a bunch of people all acting in their own self-interest, in their own agenda. We're losing commonality if we ever had it. They're going off and doing their own thing, which may or may not be helpful, may even be counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish. Um, or they're telling us we're now engaging in deception. They're telling us, well, I got it done, without giving us a true assessment of where they're at and where they're going, and or they're working on it, whatever that means, which may or may not yield information where any of us can help. So as we think of each other as components, contributors, assets working towards this common goal, we also know that not everyone is perfect. If they were, we'd only need one person that could do the whole thing. If we need everybody on the team, then we need to work together in order to accomplish what we're trying to do. And it's hard when you're on the fly, you're in the thick of things. Bullets are whizzing past. I can't use that metaphor this morning. It's a wrong timing. But if it's tough out there, then how do you deal with that in real time? And this is, you reach a point where you do the best you can. But having this concept of I have a team, I want everybody on my team to be the best they can be. I want them to help me be the best I can be. And we're all working together. That seems to be the optimal that you can work towards. And it's never perfect. It's always going to need improvement. We're in a dynamic situation and things will go wrong. So it is what it is. But yeah, working with a group of people who have enough background to appreciate that all these things are challenges all the time, you get to a little bit of a greater comfort zone. You don't have to worry quite as much because you're fairly certain that if you screw up, that somebody else will step in and fix it for you. And it isn't like you messed up totally. It's just you didn't bring your part to the team. And it's like again in sports, I use baseball a lot, that if the second baseman misses the ball, it goes through them. Maybe the first baseman, the shortstop, backed him up. That's what backup means, where other team members are covering for everybody. But you use the example of the tennis player, and they are, I will call it the visible component, the tip of the iceberg that's above the water. But any person who's succeeding at that level has a team at multiple layers, from their nutritionists to their trainers to their parents to their fans to whoever. And when we put together a fundraising project, technically, anyone who's an investor candidate is a part of our team. And if we don't treat them as part of our team, because we need their funding to achieve whatever it is we're trying to do, then we're not respecting them. We're not accounting for them. We're not helping them achieve or be the best they can be. And this is where I see a lot of things fall apart, where people get, well, our group is 4 people. I go, no, it's every vendor supplier we have. If they don't get the stuff to us on time, then we can't do our job. So everybody you're dependent upon to get to your goal, whether they're in this group or the larger group, you really got to anticipate, think through that. And it's something that comes up all the time about supply chain management or stuff. And you're going like, yeah, it seems like Captain Obvious stuff. You should be thinking about this all the time. But not everybody is that expansive in their thinking. And I find it's one of the areas where most teams have weaknesses, is they don't think outside of themselves or outside of their small group. They don't think of the entire world as being potentially a team member. And it's one of the fun things about LinkedIn is kind of every morning as I get into a show or I'm posting a newsletter, I'm kind of thinking, well, the world technically is my team. And I would like to benefit all the members of my team with whatever I'm putting into my newsletter today, knowing that that's not going to happen, but try to help as many people as possible. But at the same time, I would like more feedback from my team. I would like more support from that larger team, whether it's the world or LinkedIn, or it's my connections, or subscribers to my newsletter, or the people who are going to be in the audience tomorrow in my LinkedIn live show. They're all team members at some level. And if I think of them that way, then I think I'm going to get a better outcome.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I believe it really adds a lot of context to what we're talking about. The other aspect of a team, and I remember being at some speech by, I think it was Jim Rowan, and he had a question for the audience and says, who here is in sales? And about 15% of the people raised their hand. And he said, no, everybody in an organization, or you're supporting customer service, you're in distribution, logistics. So, I think what Karl pointed out is delineating direct team members. So if you had 7 people, let's say a board of advisors, well, that's a group that's specifically there for a reason. Below that, you have support people who make appointments for you, people who handle the group itself, maybe travel arrangements, things of that nature. And below that, you have a level. And that's why I believe in today's age of different communication, especially with social media, is you need to have a strategy for each group of support. So you have a shareholder group. They get different communication than, let's say, a customer group or a service provider. But everybody needs to kind of know what's going on, because they need to be ready when they need to be ready. So it's better to inform people to say, sales are up 35%. We're expanding into the mid-Atlantic area. We're doing this. Not to say, okay, now it changes what you do, but now be aware of what we're doing. So when it comes time, you'll have this in your mind. And the other thing is not just recruiting people, but how do you retain them? How do you get them interested and keep them interested? And then how do you promote them? And I think that's so important. It really, I believe, comes down to more time spent in due diligence before you choose and then decide, because you can always deal with one person with you because it doesn't get beyond that. But put five people together that you don't know that well, and then all of a sudden personalities start to show themselves, and maybe activities start to pop up that aren't as positive or as aligned. Now you're trying to fix a car when it's running in front of people. And if you have to eliminate a person, everybody's looking what just happened to Jim, and they may not know the whole story. And so I think it's really important to ask the right questions. I think Karl makes a great point. See their background, see what they've done, get references on those people, just to be sure. There's a point where you got to use your gut feeling, but also it's how do you set expectation? A lot of times when I wasn't sure with an employee, I'd say, would you like to do a trial? Let's have 90 days and let's have a review. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, and then we'll have some conversations along the way. Or let's give it 2 weeks, or hey, spend a day here, see how things are done. Let's see how you do things. And because what you don't want to do, it becomes more than just you. I always felt really responsible for anybody I brought into something or hired, because they have a family, they have a life, they have overhead. To do it kind of willy-nilly and hope it works, well, that's not the best way of approaching it. Versus, here's my concerns, right? Here's some things that I'm not comfortable with. What can you help me with this? Or at least here's the area I'm sensitive to. Is there something that can give me more comfort? Or should we just defer? Or maybe it's not right. Why force it? It's always better to have people who are eager, ambitious, energetic, excited to be part of something. What would people do to be part of their favorite team? If the Broncos or the New York Giants, whoever, they said, hey, we'd love you having on the sideline. Well, most people can't afford a ticket on the stands, let alone be in the sidelines. And I think that's the idea to volunteering, to interning, because it's one of the only ways you're not going to have any resistance if you're willing to contribute without any benefit, if you're willing to put yourself aside for a while, in order to demonstrate your capabilities. Because what would having an experience of 10 different jobs that ended badly versus putting that same time into something you always wanted, dreamed of, and loved to be around? I mean, Steven Spielberg, I believe when he was 17 or 18, walked into a lot of the movie studios, found an empty office, and took it over. And no one even knew he was there, but he kept working there, right? He wasn't on the payroll. And eventually someone saw him and asked him who he was and what he was doing, and they found a position for him. Now, he got lucky and not get thrown out same day. And I'm not advocating that as a sure thing or a way to approach it. But, I think everybody wants to know is, how much desire do you have? How important is this? What are you willing to do to keep it? They say, fear of loss is a bigger motivator than greed. People will fight like hell to keep what they got, but don't always do a lot more to get more than they have. So, I think it's really, and good people who are astute see that in some people. I knew during the interviews, within sometimes 3-4 minutes, this was a solid person. Just the way they presented themselves, just the way they looked in my eyes, just the way they were waiting for the question, and how important it was to them. And I had people show up like they just rolled out of bed, came in late, were looking over there when I was talking. And it's like, hey, this is their time. If this is how they handle their time and their future, how are they going to handle my time and my future? So everything you do is a reflection on who you are. And why are you here? What do the big question is why. I know what I needed for my team, and you may fit the parameters, but what are you going to make me excited to see you all the time and to speak with you? Because it's really the above and beyond that makes the difference. Is when the crunch time, is someone willing to work it till 3 in the morning to get it done if you got something that needs to be out in the morning. And then how thoughtful and how rewarding are you when good things, just like you want to be careful not to be too angry or direct. You have to be able to point out what's good in people. There's a saying, praise in public, criticize in private, right? If someone does a really good job or something that you really want to share with others, hey, Mary just did this and it was exceptional. I want everybody to appreciate Mary a little bit more because of it. And everybody says, well, if that's what the guy wants, maybe that's what I'm going to start doing. So modeling and being the first one to set the example. There's too many leaders who say, do as I say, not as I do. Or it's good for you, but I don't need it anymore. I've already done it. I don't, and at that point, you're really separating yourself from people. And a team really has to be on the same field at the same time playing together, not some entitled person who, for whatever reason, doesn't show respect to the new player or the player that's not doing as well. And usually you see teams, especially hockey, is a great example where you always have a 40-year-old or a 38-year-old, a bunch of veterans, who are there for the young players, who are there to really mentor them and to be the example for them, like the Charles Barkley, Dr. J example. There's people coming up and there's people leaving. And you need to make that transition easy because not only are you starting with a team, you're going to hopefully do well enough to build on the team. And how many people say I was Microsoft's number 7 player? Well, anytime you could say number 7, number 20, number 100, you're rich. If you joined the team at that point and stayed with it and it continued to grow. And sometimes a team will take you in places you couldn't have gone by yourself. And sometimes you can take a team in places it couldn't have gone. And it's a reciprocal back and forth motion that makes a difference because, in most sports, they say, who's the team player here? And it usually may not be the big scorer, may not be the person that makes the most money, but that's the person in the locker room that's really getting everybody up, making things happen. Maybe the clown in the group that puts some laughter behind something that wouldn't have been as funny. Everybody has, it's like spices, a little bit they can add to it to make it special and something that you don't want to leave. And I've seen sports players in many cases stay in situations for less money than they could have because they're looking to win a championship. And a guy like LeBron, he took a couple $1 million pay cut to open things up for the Lakers when he just signed. Didn't have to. I mean, he's still making $50 million a year, and that's still pocket change to what he's making with his promotions and marketing abilities. But, at his stage of the game, he just wants more rings. That extra pay is incremental to what he's already got. And if you look at people like Tiger Woods, why does he keep coming back into these championships? Because he's got that competitive desire to show himself as much as he can. And some people honestly can't leave the game when they should. Muhammad Ali stayed too long, and you can, especially boxers, something about a golfer. I mean, usually it's not a high, stress or risk situation. But, and people see that, and I think that's important to know when to make transitions, know when to leave at the top. Even as a speaker or as a consultant, You want to leave people wanting more, not wishing for less. You know, I've heard, and meetings are the same way. Geez, I know this meeting. I've heard it before. I've been part of it. After 10 minutes, I'm just here for the duration, you know, putting a smile on my face with a bunch of other false people around me. And you know, that's a question mark itself. But I think if you look at it as human behavior and being somewhat a psychologist in a way, because it's really easy to determine what it is. The hard part is why. When someone says something, take their words for being their words. But the question is, why did they bring this up now? Why is this important to them when it doesn't seem to be important to anybody else? And why do you do it in a group setting? You know, it's a lot easier to say, hey, when the meeting's over, can I grab you for 10 minutes? You know, or send a memo in advance, just a heads up. I see we're discussing this. I think you should be aware of that. And again, different people have different situations, and some are personal, some are emotional. Knowing that can add context and can add some validity to what you're doing. And plus, like I say, how you take care of people is how you're going to take care of other people. So be on guard, especially with social media, and anything you say can and will be used against you possibly. So, Karl, I mean, it seems like 56 minutes have just gone by, and we've been ripping and roaring today. You know, what's your finale on teamwork and good words to say before we let all these wonderful people on to their future opportunities?
I think the key thing is if you're a member of a team, you need to give feedback. This is the communication part all the time, good and bad. Um, you can, how you present it is very important. But if somebody helps you do something, then you thank them and you figure out how to reward them. If it becomes something that you really want to call special attention to, and at the same time, if they didn't do something, then you ask them, was there, I was expecting this. Could I help you with that? But you're basically presenting yourself as somebody willing to work with them to make them better so that in effect you can help yourself. It's an indirect way of helping yourself. But all too often, there's no communication taking place, there's no feedback whatsoever. If you're a customer, I get things from Amazon all the time. Thank you very much for giving us feedback on this sale, because I want a customer to know that this worked or didn't work. As a customer, I want to give feedback to the vendor supplier. We don't do that as much as we should. We often, tilt the scales in favor of complaining, but it's not necessarily productive feedback on what you could do better. But even then, a complaint's better than silence. If you walk away because you're unhappy, the vendor never knows. And same thing with the team member. If a team member doesn't do something that you expect them to do or thought they were going to do, then you should say something like, I thought you were going to do that. And it's not intended to be critical. It's just like, okay, I didn't prepare myself for you're not doing that. What can I do better in the future so that we don't have a gap or we don't miss the baton because we're 50 yards apart and we try to do a handoff. I think that teamwork is this constant work to basically optimize the performance of everybody else on the team, which reflects positively on you. This is kind of an easy, cheap investment to help your team members be the best they can be, which makes you look better. And there's no way around it. You're going to come out ahead if your team's performing well.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. It kind of reminds me of keeping your ear close to the ground. I know Hyatt hotels had at least one day a year where every major person took a regular job there. So the chairman worked as somebody who would help people get into cars or taxis. Somebody would be in charge of working the front desk. because then they could actually talk to customers. They could actually feel customers, and data and reporting is great, but experience is everything. And plus, if it's good enough for you, it's good enough for others, and vice versa. I was never a big guy for having parking spaces with your name on it, being elite where I don't do what everybody has to do, or the sun rises and sets with you, because it's too much responsibility, and it looks bad and feels bad to other people. And people have to wonder, why do you need that in order for you to work with this team? Right? And that becomes a challenge. And you have to put yourself second to the cause or the relationship. And it's not easy. And that's where coaching, that's where having an advisory group, having a group of friends that have no skin in the game directly, but have an interest in supporting and helping you out through that. And it never hurts to ask, why not buy some vowels before you solve the puzzle? Why not say, before you make a decision, is there anything we haven't talked about? Is there an issue with anything we're saying? With the ability to change if it's valid and justified. Because asking for help and not wanting it is actually better not asking for it. Or, asking for the help that you want to hear and not the one you don't. And in a lot of cases, that's where consultants will come in, is they'll end up giving their report so someone can say, well, I paid this money to Jim over there and he validated this, so I think we should go with it, instead of saying, I decided to go with it. And then if you want to know why, I can give you some examples of what I did to get to this conclusion. And so there's so much to it, but it's so important. Teams win and lose by just one crack in the management team, depending on how fast they go and how risky they want to get. And knowing also the redundancy and dependency that you create for key players, especially with startups. So with that said, I want to thank everybody, especially Karl. I want to thank the audience for the wonderful comments, and the future audience for things that we have maybe shared that could be beneficial. I believe happy to say Karl and myself are very open to comments and thoughts after this. If you want to reach out to us, we always have a few extra minutes that we're willing to share to get to know people, and especially if they're aligned. So anyways, go out, have a beautiful day. It's Monday. It's the start of your week. Start it fresh.